Hello, I'm Matt Galloway, and this is the Current Podcast.
It's been over 2 years since fighting between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Force broke out. Since then, upwards of 12 million people have been displaced, 8 million within the country and the rest making their way out to neighbouring countries like South Sudan and Chad. But in the face of ongoing conflict, people are now starting to return. The United Nations says nearly 2 million people have already made their way back home. Mamadou Diane Balde is the UN High Commission for Refugees Regional Director for East Africa. He's also the Regional Refugee Coordinator for the Sudan crisis. He was recently in Sudan's capital, Khartoum. We reached him in Nairobi, Kenya. Good morning.
Good morning, Catherine.
So much has happened in those 2 years, Mamadou. As people are returning to places like Khartoum, how much have those places changed?
Catherine, I happened to live in Khartoum over 20 years ago. And visiting Khartoum 10 days ago was really heartbreaking. What I saw was destruction of houses, destruction of services. It's also a place where you see Sudanese who've been affected by this brutal conflict are returning, and where they are ready, willing to resume lives, and they need our support. At the same time, it's also a place, whether Khartoum, Wad Madani in Al Jazeera state or in Sennar state, it's also places that are where people say it is home. And at the same time, it's also places that require our support so that refugees, internally displaced persons can return home.
Help us understand, people are making this difficult decision, I'm sure, to return. You say what you saw there was heartbreaking. What are they returning to? Is there sufficient housing, services in a country that has struggled for more than 2 years now?
The Sudanese I met come back home empty-handed. They come back home seeing their houses destructed. They come back home and seeing no services for water, for energy, no electricity, as well as no health system. So the people I met were basically telling me that we've gone for months, for years, now over 2 years, and very soon a half. And they are just coming back to finding nothing. And what was also, I would say, helpful is to see that people have the determination to doing and to take care of themselves. And they were telling us that this is the time for us to help the part of Sudan that are still stable or that have become stable to be supported for reconstruction, for rebuilding the individuals themselves. And I would say there are several other parts at the same time that are still producing refugees. The Kordofans, the Darfurs of this world are still producing refugees.
This, of course, has been an ongoing tragedy, and yet one that has received relatively little attention from the world. People may recall that the essence of the civil war is conflict between the Sudanese armed forces and this paramilitary group, the Rapid Support Forces. But what is at the... Briefly, can you explain what is at the heart of the conflict?
This conflict has affected 8 million Sudanese home, people who have been obliged, forced to leave their houses, not one time, not 2 times, not 3 times. So what you see are people affected by the conflict and people who say, we need an end to this conflict. We need a ceasefire. We need peace. And to add to this, the situation has become stable, better in certain part of Sudan. At the same time, there are parts, as we speak now, where you still have an active conflict in the Darfurs, in the Kordofans. This explains to you why we have over 3.3 million Sudanese who are still outside the country and who are longing for peace so that they can return home.
And there has been movement in the conflict this week insofar as the paramilitary group, the Rapid Support Forces, have announced the leadership for a self-declared parallel government. What does that mean for this conflict, do you believe?
The conflict in Sudan affecting these millions of people has just lasted for far too long. And what we see today is sadly a continuation of the conditions that have left people for themselves, and without no support. You see, I went to Wadi Halfa, which is 1,200 kilometers from Khartoum, at the border with Egypt. The people I met there who are coming back from Egypt, they come back empty-handed. What they come and say is, we need peace, we need ceasefire, and we need support so that we can rebuild our lives and that we can reconnect with our families, we can live normal lives. This is the message we need to pass, and any development that is leading to additional fractures are not going to help them. And the Sudanese refugees, the Sudanese displaced, and the Sudanese who are affected by this conflict are tired by this continued conflict, by this brutal conflict. And it's men, women, children like all of us and our loved ones that have been affected by this conflict. It just needs to end.
You talk about the possibility of additional fractures. Is it correct to understand that there are fears that rival governments could lead to another split in Sudan? We saw, of course, in 2011, South Sudan being formed.
Sudan has a rich history, and a history that Sudanese people need to write. And what we see today, and what Sudanese I meet in countries receiving refugees, like in Chad, in Egypt, in Uganda, in South Sudan, what they tell us is that Sudan needs peace, Sudan needs ceasefire, and the more this situation is prolonged, the more it is creating problems for people. And I hope that this is not going to last. And this is the message that the Secretary General has passed. This is the message that my own High Commissioner has passed to the international community. Let's help Sudan take care of itself, and then to help people return home and to live dignified lives.
What would you most like to see the international community do at this moment to help those people?
Really, three key messages that Sudanese I meet, as well as the refugees inside Sudan, because as we speak, Sudan still hosts over 800,000 refugees from neighboring countries. Here are the three messages they pass. One is to say they need peace and ceasefire, so that they can rebuild their lives, they can return home, whether they are still internally displaced or just affected by the conflict, or they are refugees. So a call to peace as well as ceasefire. Number two, what refugees outside Sudan have been telling us is that they are suffering. The level of suffering is so high, and the refugee response plan, which I coordinate and which has over 111 NGO partners, UN agencies, and other partners, what they are saying is that these countries, let's take Chad, let's take South Sudan, let's take Egypt, they have opened, and the communities have opened their doors, received the refugees, given what they could. But when the support to that response plan is only funded at 17%, it won't work. You will not have possibilities to help to relocate refugees, water systems, access to food, access to mental health for people who have been traumatized, for people who have been brutalized by this conflict, will not happen. So the second message is that of support for the refugees themselves, for the communities hosting the refugees, and these countries that are hosting the refugees. And third message, I would say, is the one of hope. you see in times where we see less and less solidarity and generosity towards refugees, the refugees are ready to take care of themselves. And I can say to you that whether we see the students, the business people in all these countries of asylum, they are ready to take care of themselves, and they have the resilience, and there is a hope by supporting them to really contribute to solutions. So I would say these three key messages are ones that need to be highlighted, in addition to the brutality of this conflict, very sadly, which has lasted for far too long.
How do you continue to find hope, having been forced to flee and seeing what you saw recently?
Sudan has, and Sudanese people have remained some of these generous people. Before this conflict started in April 2023, Sudan was hosting close to 1 million refugees. And I'm one of those people who benefited from the generosity of Sudanese people. So it's a country that has its own history, complications, complexities, several issues. But in a context like Sudan, speak with the Sudanese inside the country, they need to be provided with the support. And I have no doubt that these two will end. All hope, prayers, messages passed to the international community, including to the Security Council, is to say, let's support the Sudanese, find the solutions to this problem so that this situation doesn't continue like this. The suffering and the amount of destruction in people's bodies, into properties, into communities, and finally.
Thank you for taking the time to share your experiences with us today.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
Mamadou Diane Balde is the UN High Commission for Refugees Regional Director for East Africa. He was in Nairobi, Kenya. Saydah Mustafa is a Sudanese Canadian who was studying medicine in Khartoum when the war broke out. Matt Galloway spoke with her 2 years ago as she was trying to figure out the safest way to leave the country. She's now continuing her studies in Grenada in the East Caribbean. Saydah, good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like you to take us back to that conversation you had with Matt in 2023. Canada had plans to get citizens out of Omdurman, but it was too dangerous for you to get there. How did you manage to leave Sudan?
So basically, when I spoke to Matt, I was in Wadi Halfa, which is the place that borders Egypt from Sudan. And I was in the process of leaving via bus, since the Canadian evacuation was too difficult for me, at least. We did face a lot of obstacles on the way as we attempted to exit the country. We ended up just leaving via bus, and then we took a plane from the Aswan International Airport back to Saudi to my family.
And how did you end up in Grenada?
So in that moment, as the journey took place, I just kind of realized that it's going to be very hard for me to just go back. So I started exploring other options. And one of my dad's colleagues knows someone that studied in a university in the Caribbean, which also partnered with the UK. So I ended up spending my first 2 years in the UK before transitioning to Grenada. This program was the most understanding of my circumstances, and they kind of helped me progress to where I am now. But yeah, it was kind of like a very hard decision to move this far, but I felt like I was certain in the fact that it was a point of no return almost, that it would have taken me a lot to try and figure out if I wanted to continue back in Sudan or not.
What do you know about what has happened to your home in the time since you left?
So about a few months ago, we ended up receiving a video of the state of our house. So our family home is a home of many generations. It has about 4 or 5 floors. So they ended up bombing our house, and everything kind of just turned into rubble. Everything was misplaced. There was a lot of looting prior. It was in a condition that was very heartbreaking for me and my family to see, considering that this house was a token of our appreciation for my grandfather who passed away, and this house was built in his honor. So
it's a big loss.
It's a big loss, yes.
You still have family in parts of Sudan. How are they doing?
Yes. They're holding up, although the living condition isn't ideal. They just live a minimalistic life. So a transition from the life they used to live prior to the war to now it's a very, very big change. And yeah, they're just adapting since they don't really have a way out.
We just heard Mamadou Diane Balde talking about hope for peace. I wonder how much hope for peace you feel at this moment.
Seeing how sudden the conflict arose and how spontaneous everything was, there is a sense of unease in that it might happen again, considering that I've been there at the heart of the conflict in Khartoum, minutes away from the military palace. So it was, I feel like there's just little hope on my end, but I really want that to change. But seeing that the conflict has slowly died down over the past few years, I could be a bit hopeful. However, it's just difficult for me to kind of see Sudan return to the place that it used to be prior, at least not until a few decades pass.
You have difficulty believing that it can return to that place.
Yeah.
What do you think when you hear about the people who are returning, be they internally displaced people who are coming back to their homes or people who are crossing borders?
It is inspiring seeing that, the solidarity that Sudanese people and the loyalty that these people have towards their country and their willingness to just come back and, set the ground for more and more people to come in. And it's just inspiring to see. And it requires a lot of resilience and a lot of strength since the country's condition is in certain places almost inhabitable. But yeah, it's very fascinating to see how they're willing to start over despite losing everything.
But for you, it sounds like it would be too difficult, too uncertain, too frightening to return?
At least in this stage of my life, yes. Maybe years down the line, I could change that perspective, but for now, it's kind of my state of mind.
You are also Canadian, and I wonder what you would hope to see from Canada with regards to this conflict.
I just feel like the Sudanese conflict is an extremely underreported conflict, and it's just disheartening to see that not a lot of people know what's going on. So I just wish that the Canadian government would continue to advocate and contribute to the wellness of Sudanese Canadians, as well as contribute to maybe possibly investing in the country and helping rebuild it. And yeah, not just Canada, but also all the other neighboring countries, because I feel like Sudan has a lot of potential. They have a lot of resources. Sudanese people have a lot of ambition. And I just feel like it is worth investing and it's worth aiding.
I can understand the desire to see people who have suffered for so long thrive. I wonder, given the political state of the country, the possibility of a parallel government which could lead to additional fractures and further complicate a very difficult situation, whether it's feasible right now to make those kinds of investments when there's still so much that's unsettled and uncertain.
And that's kind of the reason why I am not very hopeful at the moment. So I would like to see these changes slowly take place over the next few years. But first, we have to focus on the government and the rule and just organizing everything. And I feel like with other countries contributing and sorting it out, and the United Nations also taking part in the decision of what happens to the government, I feel like that could be a very big starting point. So now the idea of a parallel government might not be ideal. I feel like I would love to see other countries also contribute into making it a more stable infrastructure.
You talk about the fact that so many people are unaware of the conflict. It doesn't receive as much attention, and yet, of course, it is. There have been so many problems: famine, claims of genocide, drone warfare. If people retain one thing about this conflict in Sudan, anyone listening now, what is it you would most want them to know about this moment?
That this is something that could happen to a lot of people at any point in time. And we were just fortunate enough to escape. But there's the other bunch of us that have no option. And I would like people to just realize that not everyone was born into that same privilege, and not everyone has the equal opportunity to save themselves or protect themselves. So I would just like people to think, this could be anyone at any point. And I just want people to sympathize with the unheard voices and all the trauma that my people have gone through. And yeah, I would love for people to continue shedding light on Sudan and continue helping and advocating for an equal representation.
Saydah, thank you for shedding light today. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Saydah Mustafa is a Sudanese Canadian and medical student in Grenada.
You've been listening to The Current Podcast. My name is Matt Galloway. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you soon.